Hardcore Classic WoW, the ultimate challenge testing skill, knowledge, and determination of anyone who dares to set foot in the dangerous world of Azeroth. This arduous journey from levels 1 to 60 can take days, weeks, or even months for some, and in Hardcore all that progress can be whisked away in one misstep off an elevator or pulling one too many murlocs on the beach. In many ways, the early levels can be a place in which the most deaths and errors occur, and that's what this video is here to discuss. This video will be a brief, comprehensive guide to all the dangerous corners of Azeroth in which a Horde player leveling from 1 to 30 could die and lose hours of progress. This video will discuss these hazards zone by zone, beginning at the starting zones and ending at the zones that mark the midpoint of most Horde players' journeys. That being said, there are hundreds of ways to die in Hardcore, so I may not cover everything that could possibly threaten you on your journey, but I will still try to cover what stands out for the most part for almost every adventurer. To go along with this video, I also heavily recommend the add-on Deathlog, which will add heat maps of other hardcore players' deaths to your maps, which will give you a broad sense of where other players have died. With that being said, let's begin in Durr. Durr, where orcs and trolls start their adventure, has quite a few hazards as far as starting zones go. First major point in which I recommend you look out for is the troll camps in the Echo Isles, where Zalazane and his troll entourage reside. The main issue here is generally just the large mob density, making it rather easy to pull one too many mobs, which are hard to deal with at early levels. As long as you are cautious of your surroundings and at the recommended level, then the area should be passable by most. Generally, this is a high traffic area, so the risk is minimal if there are others around. The next place to be wary of is the Harpy Canyons to the north of Razor Hill. These areas have lots of mobs in a tight space with minimal area to run, and if there are hyperspawns, it is easy to get caught off guard. The East Harpy Canyon is particularly dangerous for its caster Harpy mobs, which sit high up out of melee range that are easy to pull if you're not being wary of them. Following that, there's a less notable location to be cautious of, that being the camp for the quest Fizzle's Claw, where the level 12 Fizzled Darkstorm lies waiting. This enemy hits particularly hard for his level and has an imp companion, with him making him extremely deadly. In addition, there are additional enemies in his camp that are easy to draw aggro of, so pull methodically. If you do have to run from fighting Fizzle, just be warned that there are numerous thunder lizards in the ravine covering your exit with hard-hitting lightning bolt attacks, so if you do have to run, it is easy to keep pulling more, leading to a swift trip to the character creation screen. The final spot in Durr is a notorious one for a reason. Skull Rock, the cavern lair for Gaz Ooze and the Burning Blade enemies of Orgrimmar, is especially scary and claims the lives of many. Almost all Horde players will enter this place as it is required to get many important quests for the Ragefire Chasm dungeon, so it is important to know the dangers. Skull Rock is likely the first of many super dangerous caves most Horde players will enter. Caves pose a threat because they have many mobs close together, with little space to run, poor vision for the player, and their tendencies to have mobs spawn behind you, trapping you in. Skull Rock is especially dangerous due to the fact that the caster enemies in this cave all have Voidwalker companions, essentially requiring the player to pull two mobs at once about half the time. What's even worse is the main objective of the cave, the orc Gaz Ooze, is a level 14 with a Voidwalker minion, which is made worse by the fact that he hits very hard, spawns close to many other mobs, and you are in a cave, which all compound to a location that claims the lives of most Horde players compared to any other location on Azeroth. If you can, I recommend not going in here alone unless you like the risk. Now looking at a sharp contrast to Durr, the lush Mulgore's lively environment reflects an overall favorability to the average hardcore player. Mulgore is a pretty safe starting zone all things considered, with only two real threats I'd say. The first would be the Venture Co mine on the east side of the zone. As far as the caves go, it is pretty standard with lots of mobs that will trap you in with nowhere to run. It lacks the severity of danger that Skull Rock had, but as a low-level character, all caves can be dangerous due to the lack of tools at the player's disposal. Now, the real threat of Mulgore is one all veteran players know and one that can easily take a new player off guard, that being the Thunderbluff elevators. Now, all there really is to say here is just to look out for the elevator leaving just before you get there and walking clean off the edge to your death. I recommend playing it safe and only getting on the elevator if it has just arrived in front of you, since you know you have the safety of a few seconds. Trying to race to the elevator to save 15 seconds is not worth the hours of time you put into your character, though it does make for some funny yet salt-inducing memories in retrospect. Tirisfal Glades, starting zone of the Undead, has some threats, but none of them are particularly terrible if you know how to deal with them. The main place of warning in this zone is the Agman Mills to the north of the zone, mainly due to the extreme mob density of the area and the Agman family crypt. The crypt is likely the first area Undead players will enter on a quest for green loot and is rather akin to the caves of other starting zones. Likely you are beginning to see a pattern that caves are very dangerous for the average hardcore player, which is not a trend that changes. The crypt is very tightly packed with lots of mobs, but generally has high player traffic, which causes it not to be too bad of an issue. Be cautious of your surroundings, and as long as you're not overzealous, you will be fine. The next area is one that should not be an issue for almost any low-level player, but I thought I would mention it anyway. That being the Scarlet Monastery to the far northeast of the zone. There is really no reason to go up here as a low-level character, since it's full of level 30 plus elites and is home to a level 30 plus dungeon, that being the Scarlet Monastery. If you wander up here and accidentally pull a mob, you will likely die, so I thought I would mention it anyways. Another silly mistake some players make in Tirisfal Glades is jumping off the Zeppelin before it docks and falling to their death. Just a small slip up here could kill you, so just watch out for that. Finally, for Tirisfal Glades, and perhaps one of the most dangerous things for all Horde players, is the Undercity elevator. Even more notorious than the elevators of Thunderbluff, this one moves far faster and has extremely short windows for entry, so it is not uncommon to see it swiftly leave right before a player walks on and leave them falling to their deaths. This elevator is not to be trifled with, and it is always a good idea to play it safe and only get on if it has just arrived. The policy for the Thunderbluff elevator is even more important. Now that we are done with the starting zones, we have the largest of the Horde leveling zones, the Barrens. This zone spans from levels 10 to 25 and has tons of things to talk about, so let's get into it. The first thing in this zone I would like to talk about are the 3 oases located around the northern half of the zone. The oases are home to several quests that you have to embark on, and they are filled with lots of mobs, especially centaurs. These centaurs are usually patrolling with several hyenas or packed together, so it is easy to pull extra, which could get you killed, since they usually run faster than you and have roots, which can guarantee death with too many mobs on you. Taking on Centaur one at a time should guarantee safety as long as you keep your head on a swivel. Also note the Elite Quest Counterattack, which has you fighting a very hard-hitting Elite Centaur, which can easily kill you if you are solo. Next in the Barrens that deserves a small mention is the Harpy area to the far northwest, which has tons of mobs both patrolling and packed all over the place. It can be rather precarious without caution, and it is easy to be caught off guard, so be wary. On to the next location, we have the Sludgefen, locale of a multitude of Venture Co related quests. The Sludgefen has a ton of mobs close to each other that have decent sized aggro radius, as well as a large rig in the center in which you'll be required to go up for a quest. This rig is full of mobs that are especially easy to pull on accident and can quickly overwhelm the player. Additionally, there's an escort quest here titled Whizzlecrank Shredder, which is not recommended to do until a higher level due to the mob count here. Also, there is a Samophalange quest nearby to the southwest which spawns multiple mobs on you at once, which can easily catch the players off guard, so note that as well. The next place to know is Northwatch Hold, situated directly south of Ratchet. This area is similar to others with lots of mobs in a small area, most notably the towers you must venture into for the quest. Additionally, there's an escort quest in here, which I do not recommend for any solo player that is not a few levels above the soldiers in the fortress. Next thing for us to look at is the Rare Spawn Alliance Night Elf Patrol, led by Ain Swiftriver, as she leads 3 other rare elite mobs. This group patrols between coordinates y equals 45 to y equals 80, along the main path leading from the crossroads to 1000 Needles. They are incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to solo normally at a similar level, so I do not recommend approaching them unless you are in a group. They pose a serious hazard to you if you have a tendency to go on auto run and tab out, so I recommend just never doing that in hardcore in general. A quick thing to mention is that nearby Camp Tarajo, around coordinates 4957, there is an Alliance-aligned NPC for a Warlock class quest named Takar the Seer. He will not aggro to you unless you attack him, so just don't accidentally hit him and you'll be fine. Last thing I would like to mention in the Barrens is a dwarf stronghold of Baal Modan in the southeast of the zone. This area has a few quests in it, one of which you will need to go deep into the stronghold that is akin to a cave. It has many hard-hitting, tightly packed dwarf mobs, and I would not recommend trying to solo this entire place if you're not overleveled. As we're at about the halfway point of this video, I just want to say this is my first video on this channel, and thank you so much for watching to this point. If you want more content like this, then please subscribe and drop a like and comment below. Next up we got Silver Pine Forest, which spans from levels 10 to early 20s and has quite a few sketchy things to look out for. First thing they bring attention to, which all experienced Horde players know to look out for, are the Sons of Argal. These mobs are level 24 to 25 elite Worgen that roam around the southwest and northwest areas of the zone, as well as sometimes roaming near the road in front of the main quest hub, the Sepulchre. These mobs will catch you out of nowhere, as they tend to be nearby many quest hubs and can blend in with other Worgen mobs. In this zone, you have to be hyper vigilant for wandering Sons of Argal, because if they aggro and catch up to you, you will almost certainly die. I recommend the add-on High Level Alert to help you in this zone. This add-on will alert you whenever a Son of Argal is nearby, and it is super helpful. Next place to be cautious is Fenris Isle, a hub for multiple quests, including some elite quests. The island has a walled fortress with very high mob density, can be extremely dangerous if you are caught off guard. Soloing this area is not recommended since there is little room to run away, and it is easy to be overwhelmed by lots of mobs. A similar thing can be said for our next location, Pyrewood Village near Shadowfang Keep. This place is filled with entirely elite mobs and small buildings, so tread with caution. The next spot of note is Amber Mill, which is full of human enemies, both melee and caster. The outskirts of this area is not terrible, but inside the main fort and within the buildings, the mobs can quickly overwhelm you, especially the conjurers with their minions that will make it impossible to run away. Tread with caution and make sure not to overpool and you'll be fine. The final location in Silverpine to be wary of is Baron's Peril, a cave in the hills just south of Amber Mill. This cave has all the traditional dangers of a cave in hardcore, but additionally has some pretty hard-hitting ghoul and skeleton mobs that are packed tightly together. If your class is not equipped, they can pretty easily overwhelm you with how small the cave is. The next zone to cover is one of the most treacherous, that being Ashenvale for around levels 20 to 30. The main hazard in this zone for Horde players comes in the form of high-level Alliance NPCs located around the zone that will one-shot most Horde players who aggro them. The first ones you will likely encounter will be a tower south of Rainwood Retreat and the surrounding area. Just make sure not to get too close and you'll be fine, and that goes for all Alliance camps in this zone. The next place of danger, both due to the nearby Alliance NPCs and the other mobs themselves, is the Mistral Lake. This lake is full of water elementals that are easy to pull extra of due to the weird perspective of being in the water. If you do pull too many and can't kill them, you will likely die since running is not an option since they swim many times faster than you. In addition to the water elementals, there is an Alliance camp nearby with hostile NPCs. These can be easily avoided but are important to mention. The next big hazard for Horde players in Ashenvale is the Night Elf town of Ashenar in the middle of the road heading to the Zorm Strand and the Blackfathom Deeps. As a Horde player, you need to avoid this at all costs and steer clear of the path, or else you will definitely die from the guards. Just go around Ashenar and you will get by without a scratch. The final Alliance outpost to be wary of is Maestra's Post, which is just off the path to the right shortly after Ashenar. You should never need to be close enough to the point where you will pull any guards or NPCs, so just be cognizant of its existence and you should be fine. Now steering away from Alliance-filled locales, you need to be wary of Thistlefur Village just north of Ashenar. This place is filled with many tightly packed groups of furbolgs at camps and also has a cave with very tight quarters full of furbolgs. As for other areas of a similar kind, it is very easy to pull too many mobs and get trapped. Last location for Ashenvale is going to be Saturnar to the northeast, which is challenging for a unique reason. First of all, there are a lot of stealth satyrs around the area which can easily sneak up on you and be pulled on accident. More importantly, the satyrs here can apply a curse on you for 3 minutes, which will at random times stun you for 3 seconds out of nowhere. Personally, I have had chains of 3-second stuns go off, and if this happens while you're fighting a mob, for some classes that usually means certain death. I would not recommend doing the quest here unless you are in a group or are a few levels above the mobs here. Next, we are brought to the Stone Talon Mountains to the west of the Barrens, which have quests varying from levels 15 to 30. The first area of hazard for those questing in Stone Talon Mountains is the small spider ravine south of Sun Rock Retreat that is home to the elite level 21 spider Bessaleth. Other than Besseleth, the area is not too much worry, but Besseleth herself does a lot of damage, and her as well as the surrounding spiders can poison and root you, so it's a good idea to be well prepared. Next in Stone Talon is the cave in the south side of Windshear Crag, home of the quest Gorenzo's Orders. This quest is in the back of a cave full of kobolds and requires you to protect a goblin as he mines ore. You must protect him from 3, then 4 more kobolds in waves, which is extremely hard to do solo at an appropriate level. I highly advise skipping this quest and cave altogether because the experience is minimal and the risk is far too high. Next spot in Stone Talon Mountains that poses a great threat is the Stone Talon Peak to the far north, which is home to many mobs, alliance NPCs, elites, and a cave. Overall, if you are a new player or are trying to be extra cautious, I do not recommend going up here to do any quest because it is simply a bit too risky. Going up here by yourself poses a decent threat since it has many of the common risk of dangerous areas but compiled on top of each other. Questing up here in a group is not as risky and wouldn't be a terrible option if you really needed to. The final spot in Stone Talon Mountains is the Charred Vale. This is located to the southwest of the zone and has lots of good quests located here, but it also has quite a few dangers. The main issue is the extremely high mob density even compared to other dangerous areas. It is easy to pull a lot of mobs here, but they are manageable with proper preparation. A very dangerous elite mob for its level, known as the Blood Fury Ripper, is located on the west side of the Vale and is very hard to solo elite quest, even for players higher than its recommended level, so watch out for them. Lastly, for the Charred Vale, the Blackened Basilisk here are extra dangerous for their potential 15-second stun they inflict, which in some scenarios almost guarantees your death. Now for the last two zones, I will only be discussing the areas suited to characters below level 30, and will save the rest of them for another video. The first of these zones to look at is the Hillsbrad Foothills, possibly the most dangerous of the early Horde leveling zones, ranging from levels 20 to 35. The first thing which often catches Horde players off guard are the South Shore guards located near the Alliance town of South Shore. As a Horde player, simply staying very far away from South Shore should clear you safe from this threat. The add-on High Level Alert will work very well for these guards, as it does for the Sons of Argal as a precaution. There is a quest to be turned in near South Shore called Helcular's Revenge, and this on hardcore should pretty much never be considered as an option to complete as the risk is just too great. Next spot in Hillsbrad which poses a real threat is Durr Keep to the east of the zone. The design of the keep has a ditch through the middle with only one entrance and exit, which makes running out of it very difficult. There are lots of mobs close together in this area, especially within the buildings, and with the difficulty of fleeing, it is smart for you to pull methodically and be cautious. The next area which Horde players will spend a lot of time in is the Hillsbrad Fields. This place has a very large amount of mobs and is pretty easy to aggro more than one at a time. In the buildings of this area, it is almost impossible to not pull more than at least 2 to 3 mobs at a time, so grouping for this quest in this area is a good idea since most classes don't have the tools to deal with fighting multiple mobs at once. Also keep note of the Hillsbrad Councilmen who have a frostbolt that will slow and make it difficult to flee if necessary. Another point of danger in Hillsbrad is the Azure Lode Mine, which has a lot in common with most other dangerous caves and requires caution for the same reason. The biggest reason to fear this cave is the quest mob Foreman Bonds, who when taken below half HP will summon 2 dwarf allies to fight with him, which can easily get you killed if you're not prepared, especially since Bonds and the dwarves he spawns hit pretty hard. Lastly, in Hillsbrad, there is a dwarf bunker of Dungarok, which is full of elite dwarves. This place is not soloable and requires a group of at least 2, preferably 3. It poses similar dangers to most other elite questing areas, but has specific priestess mobs that heal other nearby enemies. This, in combination with the tight spaces that result in fighting upwards of 3 to 4 dwarves at a time, can result in some nasty circumstances. If your group is well prepared and doesn't get carried away, then Dungarok should be no problem. The final location for this video is the Thousand Needles, south of the Barrens, which ranges from levels 25 to 35. There are not too many super obvious threats in the zone, but there are still some things that stand out. First thing to note here for Horde players is the elevators to Freewind Post, which are identical to those of Thunderbluff. Following the same precautions here as you did for the other elevators in the game should result in them not being an issue, but I just wanted to mention them. Across the plateaus from Freewind Post is the Dark Cloud Pinnacle of the Grim Totem Tauren. Many of the mobs atop this area are grouped together in packs, making it hard to not pull multiple, and with you being so high from the ground, there are few places to run atop the mesa. Clearing the place out with caution should result in minimal risk, just try not to fall off the cliffs. The final area of discussion for this video will be the Harpy Cave, located at coordinates 2751. Not only does this cave have the common dangers of others like it, but it is also the location of the quest Test of Endurance. This quest involves killing multiple waves of harpies that will quickly swarm you and kill you if you are solo. This quest should only be done in a group, otherwise steer clear of it. And that wraps up some of the areas of risk for hardcore Horde characters that I wanted to warn you all of. Again, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe and drop a like and comment below letting me know if y'all want to see more videos like this one. Anyways, I'm out.